Welcome to day 4 of this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. If you're early in your business analysis career, you might be dealing with a deeply frustrating reality right now. You're doing everything by the book, yet you still kind of feel stuck. The sources we're exploring today dig into the early career journeys of business analysts and product owners, and they reveal this fascinating and honestly super common pattern. So many professionals are following the proper templates to the absolute letter. You write incredibly detailed requirements, you build these perfectly formatted Confluence pages that, let's be real here, nobody actually reads, and you manage endless Jira backlogs. Everything looks perfect on paper, but something still feels off. Projects move forward, sure, but not always in the right direction. And that just leads to confusion, constant rework, and a lot of frustration from both the business side and your tech teams. So today we are going to break down exactly why this happens and how to radically shift your mindset from just doing the job to actually creating impact. I want you to immediately challenge yourself on this. Are you just doing the job, or are you creating an impact? The source material highlights a massive realization regarding this distinction. Doing the job just means you're completing tasks, filling out templates, and moving tickets from to-do to done. And hey, it feels really productive in the moment, right? You get that little dopamine hit? Creating impact, however, means you're actually driving results and solving real problems for the business and the end user. This is the exact trap that causes that early career struggle. When you focus solely on moving tickets along just to clear a board, you completely miss the bigger picture. You might be incredibly busy, but you aren't necessarily being effective. And that leads us straight into the classic 2-year struggle. This beginner's paradox is truly fascinating to look at. Our sources note that in those first few years, business analysts feel like they're doing all the expected things. But the hard truth is, well-written requirements absolutely do not guarantee a successful solution. You can have the most beautifully documented requirements in the entire world, completely signed off by every single stakeholder, but if the project is still going in confusing circles, you haven't actually understood the core problem. The struggle happens because new BAs often wait for perfect inputs. Driven by imposter syndrome or maybe just a fear of upsetting senior stakeholders, they avoid pushing back. So they accept what they're given, they document it perfectly, and they inadvertently steer the project ship right into an iceberg. So let's look at our first major trap. Section 1, delivery does not equal value. Let's talk about this paradigm shift. You hear everyone talking about delivering value, but very few people can actually define what it means. The shift we need to make here is moving from an output mindset to an outcome mindset. The output mindset is intensely focused on capturing requirements, completing tasks, and ensuring delivery is on track. But as the source text points out, this can be incredibly deceiving. Imagine this. You spend 6 months building a highly requested feature. You hit every single deadline, you stay perfectly under budget, you deploy it to production, and crickets. User adoption is practically zero. Why does this happen? Well, because the team solved what was asked, but not what was actually needed. That is the ultimate failure of the output mindset. The outcome mindset, on the other hand, shifts focus entirely. It's all about understanding the root problem, driving tangible impact, and ensuring the business value is actually achieved, regardless of how many features you ship. The fundamental definition we need to internalize is this: value is not what you build. Value is the outcome it creates. Really let that sink in for a second. Delivering a new feature is not success. Solving a user's problem, improving their behavior, or decreasing support queries, that is success. Look at your current sprint right now. Are you measuring feature deployment, or are you measuring a shift in user behavior? Because if you don't explicitly define the outcome before delivery even starts, you aren't delivering value. You're just delivering features. And that brings us to section 2, the stakeholder myth. Let's figure out who is really to blame. When expectations keep changing, when requirements are muddy, and when decisions just keep shifting back and forth, it is incredibly easy to just blame the stakeholders. We love to say, oh, the stakeholders are just being difficult again. But our sources reveal a somewhat uncomfortable truth here. Most of the time, the stakeholders are not the actual problem. When they keep changing direction, it's almost always a symptom of missing clarity on the team's end. The underlying problem hasn't been properly defined. The success criteria aren't agreed upon. And most dangerously, hidden assumptions are lurking right beneath the surface, completely unchallenged. For instance, assuming users will naturally want to log into a brand new dashboard every single day without ever actually asking them. When clarity is weak, everything feels like a stakeholder problem. But that friction is just a byproduct of missing these foundational elements. So, how do we actually fix this? Section 3. Create clarity. don't we? This brings us to the absolute core paradigm shift required to move out of the junior struggle and take total control of your project's trajectory. I literally love this quote from the source material. Clarity is not given, clarity is created. This needs to be your daily mantra. In the real world, no one is going to hand you perfectly packaged, crystal clear requirements on a silver platter. If you act as a passive order taker, sitting around waiting for perfect clarity to just be handed down from leadership, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to be an investigator. You have to actively build that clarity yourself by asking direct questions and challenging unclear requirements at every single turn. A massive part of creating that clarity is avoiding the trap of jumping straight to solutions. Notice the profound difference between the beginner and the expert approach here. A stakeholder comes to you and says, "Hey, we need a new feature to improve customer experience." The beginner immediately accepts this premise and says, "Great, let's build it." And it feels highly productive and fast. But the sources provide a brilliant example of why this is so dangerous. A team slowed down to investigate a similar feature request, only to discover the customers weren't dropping off because of a missing feature at all. They were dropping off because the existing user journey was already deeply confusing. Adding yet another feature would have just added more clutter and made the entire problem worse. The expert approach is reframing the conversation entirely. It's stepping back and asking, wait, what problem is actually driving this need? To prevent jumping to solutions, the sources offer this highly effective 3-step framework. Before you write a single line of a requirement, or even entertain discussing a solution, you must be able to answer these 3 fundamental questions. Number 1, what problem are we solving? Number 2, who benefits the most? And number 3, what does measurable success look like? If you cannot clearly and confidently answer these 3 questions, step away from the keyboard. The solution simply isn't ready. The requirement isn't ready to be locked in. You literally have to slow down to speed up. Let's move to our final segment today. Section 4, Think Like a Senior. Mindset Matters. We've talked about what goes wrong and the frameworks to fix it. Now we need to focus on the mindset itself. The divide between junior and senior thinking is profound. The sources make a fantastic point. You can find analysts with 10 years of experience who still operate completely like beginners, and you can find people with a fraction of that time who drive incredible, outsized impact. Why? Because experience does not make you senior. Thinking makes you senior. Junior thinkers focus on staying strictly within scope, passively accepting inputs, and basically acting as mere meeting note takers. Senior thinkers, on the other hand, actively steer the meeting. They ask why. They look far beyond the immediate task. They anticipate what happens if things go wrong, and they take full, uncompromised ownership of the outcomes. At the end of the day, you are not valued for the documents you write. You are valued for how you think. So let's apply this literally today. Here are your actionable takeaways from the sources to immediately level up your career. First, do not wait for perfect requirements. Take charge and create the clarity yourself. Second, speak up when things are unclear. Your job isn't to be a silent scribe in the background of a Zoom call. You are there to guide the process. Third, ask one extra why in every single discussion. Getting past the surface-level symptoms down to the root cause is exactly how clarity is created. And finally, focus heavily on understanding the true problem before you ever start documenting the solution. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought from our sources. Nobody remembers the specific features you delivered. They only remember the outcomes you created. Look closely at your current projects right now. Is the value you're bringing clearly defined, measurable, and agreed upon? Or is it just assumed? Think deeply about that as you head into your next meeting. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep creating that clarity.